first time I saw her again, it felt like the air forgot how to move. She was standing by the window, her hand half raised as if she'd just pushed the curtain aside. Late light pooled around her, soft, golden, unbothered by time. And for a second, I almost forgot why I was there. My friend had told me to wait in the living room while he ran to grab something upstairs, and then she appeared, like she'd walked straight out of a memory I didn't know was still alive in me. "Hey," she said, her voice low and warm, carrying that calm confidence people only earn by surviving a few storms. "You've grown up." It shouldn't have mattered how she said it, but it did. I laughed, too quietly. "Yeah, it's been a while." She smiled, not wide, just enough to make it impossible to look away. There was something deliberate in the way she held herself, the ease of someone used to being looked at but tired of being seen. Her hair fell loosely against her shoulders, and there was a faint trace of perfume in the room, something floral, but deeper, like it had a story behind it. I shifted on the couch, pretending to check my phone. She moved closer. "Still playing guitar?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said. "Not as much lately." "That's a shame." She tilted her head, eyes studying me in a way that felt both kind and uncomfortably close. "You used to get lost in it." There was a pause, the kind that hums with all the things no one plans to say. She sat down across from me, crossing her legs slowly. The sound of fabric brushing against fabric filled the quiet. Her gaze lingered on the guitar case leaning by the wall. I hadn't even realized she noticed it. "You can still play something, if you want," she murmured. I almost said yes, but the way she was looking at me, steady, unreadable, made my throat tighten. Instead, I said, "Maybe later." Her lips curved, just barely. "Maybe." The air between us stretched thin. Every sound seemed louder. The tick of the clock, the low hum of the refrigerator, even the small click when she adjusted the bracelet on her wrist. I wanted to look away, but she had that kind of presence that filled a room and left nowhere else to look. When my friend shouted from upstairs, something about not finding his charger, she laughed softly. It broke the tension for half a breath, then somehow deepened it. "You boys never change," she said, standing. And then it happened. She stepped behind the couch, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her. My hair had fallen slightly over my eyes, and before I could react, her hand reached forward, slow, uncertain, and brushed it back. Her fingers barely touched my skin, but it was enough. Everything in me went still. The world outside might have been moving, but inside that room, time hesitated. Her hand lingered for a second longer than it should have. Then she pulled back, eyes flickering, as if realizing, too late, what she'd done. I swallowed hard, my voice gone. She turned away, smoothing her hair, pretending nothing had happened. Then, from the hallway, a sound, the sharp buzz of her phone vibrating on the counter. She glanced at the screen, and whatever she saw made her expression shift, something between surprise and worry. "I should take this," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. She stepped out of the room, leaving behind the faint trace of her perfume and the silence she'd filled only moments ago. I sat there, staring at the spot where she'd stood, still feeling the ghost of her touch. And just as I exhaled, my phone buzzed. A message. From her. "Don't say anything." The room fell silent again. Her message sat on my screen, glowing faintly in the dim light. "Don't say anything." It wasn't the words that made my heart thud, it was what they didn't explain. By the time she returned, her voice was calm again. Whatever had shaken her a few minutes ago was tucked neatly behind the same composed smile she'd worn when I first saw her. She placed her phone face down on the counter, as if she didn't want to see it again. "You're quiet," she said, pouring herself a glass of water. I wanted to tell her everything I was thinking, that I could still feel where her hand had brushed my hair, that her perfume had lodged somewhere in my chest, but the words felt impossible. "Just tired," I managed. She studied me for a second longer than polite conversation allowed. "You always say that." It was true. Even back when I used to come over as a teenager, that had been my answer to everything. But then, I'd only known her as my friend's mom, the woman who made coffee at midnight, who smiled but always looked like her thoughts were somewhere else. Now I was old enough to recognize what that look really was. Loneliness she never admitted to. She leaned against the counter, tracing her finger around the rim of her glass. "You know, it's strange. The house feels quieter these days. Too quiet. Since he moved out." I asked. Her eyes flickered, softening. Yeah, I got used to noise, to people coming and going. Now it's just, she trailed off, shrugging. Empty. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy, full of things neither of us could name. She caught me looking at her. Not in the way you look at someone older or someone familiar, but in the way you look when you've already crossed some invisible line. Her breath hitched, barely. You shouldn't look at me like that. I wasn't, I said too quickly. You were. Her voice wasn't sharp. It trembled at the edges, the way a secret does when it's about to break loose. I looked down, pretending to focus on the condensation forming on her glass. It's just weird being here again. She smiled faintly. Weird how? Different, I said. You're different. That made her laugh. Quiet, unguarded. I'm older. That's all. But that wasn't all. The way she spoke, the small, tired grace in her movements. There was a kind of beauty in her restraint. Like she'd spent years learning how not to want things too much. And maybe that's what drew me closer. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, eyes flicking toward me. Your generation thinks everything can be said out loud. Some things can't. The clock ticked again. Her words stayed in the air, heavy with meaning. I stood up, meaning to leave, to give both of us space. But when I moved past her, she didn't step aside. For a second, we were close enough that I could see the faint pulse at her throat. Neither of us moved. The refrigerator hummed. The rain that had started outside tapped softly against the window. She looked up, and her voice barely reached me. You should go before he comes back. I nodded, but my feet didn't move. Her hand lifted, just slightly, as if she was about to touch my face again, but then she stopped herself. Her fingers hovered in the air, trembling with the weight of all the things we both pretended not to feel. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "This shouldn't feel like this." And before I could respond, the front door opened, my friend's voice echoing down the hallway, laughing about something I didn't hear. She stepped back fast, her eyes darting to the floor. But I could still feel her nearness, a silent electricity that neither of us dared to name. The kind that doesn't fade. I told myself I wouldn't go back. But 3 days later, I was standing on her porch again, guitar in hand, pretending it was just to drop off the amp my friend had left at my place. The truth? I just wanted to see her. When she opened the door, surprise flickered in her eyes, quickly masked by that familiar composure. She wore a soft sweater, sleeves pushed to her elbows, a trace of flour dusted across her hand. "You're early," she said, smiling lightly. "He's not home yet." "I know," I said. "I just thought I'd leave this here." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." The smell of something baking drifted from the kitchen, warm, sweet, comforting. It made the house feel alive again. She moved around quietly, pulling a tray from the oven. The light from it glowed against her skin, soft and golden, just like that first afternoon. "Cookies," she said, as if explaining herself. "Old habit." I laughed. "He still hates sweets." "I know." She smiled without looking at me. Maybe they weren't really for him. Her voice softened on the last word, almost swallowed by the hum of the oven fan. I set the amp by the wall and turned to her. "You don't have to pretend." "Pretend what?" "That you're fine," I said. "You always look like you're holding something back." That made her stop. She turned slowly, meeting my eyes. For a second, neither of us breathed. Then she exhaled, a sound halfway between a laugh and a sigh. "You notice too much for your age. Maybe you hide too much for yours." The words came out before I could take them back. She froze, her fingers tightening on the edge of the counter. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "I know." Silence fell, thick, charged. She brushed past me to put the tray on the table, but her sleeve brushed my hand. The contact was nothing, a second, maybe, yet it sent a pulse through both of us. Her eyes darted up, startled, as if she felt it too. "I didn't mean," she started. "I know," I said, but I didn't move. The air between us thinned again, the same quiet gravity pulling us closer. Her lips parted slightly, breath catching, and before I could think, we were close enough that I could see the faint shimmer of heat on her skin, smell the sweetness of vanilla and perfume. She didn't step back. Her hand lifted, hesitating in the space between us, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her palm, not the touch itself. Then a sound. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. We both froze. Footsteps. Her son's voice, faint but unmistakable, drifted from upstairs. "Mom? You home?" She stepped back fast, almost knocking the tray over. Yes, she called out, her voice too bright. Kitchen. I turned away, trying to steady my breathing, the blood still pounding in my ears. When he came down the stairs, she was already by the sink, washing her hands like nothing had happened. He greeted me casually, unaware, and started talking about the gig this weekend. But I couldn't focus. She didn't look at me once. Not until he left the room. Then, just before she followed him, she glanced over her shoulder. That same unreadable look from before, part warning, part longing. Her lips moved, but no sound came. And then she was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of vanilla and everything we still hadn't said. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. It was raining, one of those steady, endless rains that turned the world soft and gray. My friend had left for the weekend, and I'd stopped by to grab a jacket I'd left at his place. She opened the door before I could knock twice. Her hair was slightly damp, the loose strands curling against her neck. She wore an old sweatshirt, one shoulder slipping down just enough to show the delicate line of her collarbone. She looked tired, not from age, but from thinking too much. I didn't expect you, she said quietly. I didn't plan to stay, I answered. She stepped aside before I could finish. Come in. You'll get soaked. The house was darker than usual. Only a small lamp lit the living room, its glow catching the faint shimmer of rain on the window. She sat down on the couch, pulling her legs beneath her, and gestured for me to do the same. For a while, we didn't speak. The rain filled the silence, steady and calm. Then she said, without looking at me, "You've been avoiding me." I froze. I thought that's what you wanted. She gave a quiet laugh, almost bitter. If only it were that easy. I turned to her. Then what do you want? Her breath caught. A tiny sound, but enough to change the air. You shouldn't ask me that. Why not? Because if I answer, something changes. The lamp flickered once. Outside, thunder rolled far away. I leaned forward, my voice low. Maybe it already has. Her eyes met mine, sharp, searching, afraid. Then her expression softened, as if something inside her had finally given up fighting. You're too young to understand what happens after, she whispered. People talk. Lines blur. I lose more than you ever could. But you're the one who texted me. Her hand tightened around the throw blanket on her lap. I know. And you touched me first. That was a mistake. Was it? The question hung there. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away. She looked like someone standing too close to the edge, but unwilling to step back. I moved slightly closer, not enough to touch her, just close enough to feel her warmth. You can tell me to leave, I said. Her voice trembled. I should. But you won't. Her head tilted, eyes narrowing. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe I do. A pause. Then, very slowly, she reached up, brushing her fingers through her hair before lowering her hand toward my face. It was the same gesture as before, slow, uncertain, devastating. Her fingers hovered near my cheek, stopping just short of contact. You make me forget how old I am, she whispered. I didn't breathe. Her hand finally touched my face, a soft, trembling trace that burned more than it should have. The distance between us disappeared until there was nowhere left to look but at each other. The rain grew louder, pounding against the glass like a warning. She leaned in, just slightly, close enough that her breath brushed my lips, close enough that one more heartbeat would close the space entirely. Then, suddenly, her phone rang. The sound shattered everything. She froze, inches away. The name flashing on the screen glowed against the dark, her ex-husband's. Her eyes met mine, wide, caught between fear and something that looked a lot like regret. Neither of us moved. And then, without a word, she reached for the phone, hand trembling, as the rain kept falling. The next morning, everything felt heavier, the kind of heaviness that comes after almost doing something irreversible. I tried to forget. I told myself she probably had too. But memory doesn't fade when it's tied to touch. 2 days later, my friend texted, "Come by tonight. Mom's making dinner. Haven't seen you in a bit." I should have said no. Instead, I said sure. When I arrived, she was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, the faint hum of a song under her breath. She didn't look surprised to see me, but she didn't smile either. Just a quiet nod that made my stomach twist. "Hi," I said, trying to sound normal. "Hey," she replied, keeping her eyes on the cutting board. "Glad you could come." Her voice was steady, too steady. My friend was upstairs, still getting ready. It left us alone again, like the universe enjoyed testing what little control we had left. Need help? I asked. She hesitated, then handed me a towel. You can dry. I stood beside her at the counter. The air between us buzzed with unspoken things, like standing near fire, close enough to feel it, but not close enough to burn. Our hands brushed once over a plate. Neither of us spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. About the other night. I turned to her. You don't have to explain. I do. She set the knife down, her voice low. Because if I don't, I'll keep thinking about it. Something in the way she said that made me look closer. Her jaw was tight, but her eyes, they were soft, searching. Before I could answer, her son's voice carried faintly from upstairs, talking on the phone. A girl's name slipped through the air, a name I didn't expect. It was hers. Not her first name, but her last. And then he said, laughing lightly, yeah, she's been lonely since the divorce. Always gets too attached to the people who show up. It's kinda sad. Her hand froze mid-motion. The sound of the knife tapping the counter stopped. She didn't move for several seconds, just stared at the sink, the tension building in her shoulders. I swallowed, unsure what to say. He doesn't mean. I know exactly what he means, she said quietly. Her voice didn't shake, but something inside it cracked. She turned away, brushing her hands against a towel, more to steady herself than to dry them. He thinks I don't notice how people look at me, how I let them get too close. Her breath trembled. Maybe he's right. I took a small step closer. He's wrong. She looked up then, and I could see it in her eyes. The anger wasn't at her son. It was at herself, for wanting something she shouldn't, for not stopping it sooner. Don't defend me, she whispered. Not when you don't even know what I've done. What do you mean? Her lip trembled before she bit it. You weren't the first. The words hit like cold water. She looked away, her eyes glassy but dry. After the divorce, I let people fill the quiet. I told myself it didn't matter, that it wasn't real. But this, she stopped herself, voice breaking slightly. This feels real. And that's what scares me. Before I could reply, footsteps sounded on the stairs. She turned back to the sink quickly, wiping her hands again, face composed, expression unreadable. My friend walked in, grinning, oblivious to the storm still trapped between us. But she didn't look at him. She looked at me. And in that look, half plea, half warning, I understood. Whatever this was, it had already gone too far to undo. It happened the night after dinner, the night I finally understood that every glance, every hesitation, every breath between us had been leading somewhere neither of us wanted to name. I told myself I was just returning her son's book, nothing more. But the lie barely lasted the drive to her house. My hands were already shaking on the steering wheel. The lights inside were dim again, a single lamp glowing from the living room. The sound of rain returned, softer this time, almost patient. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised, just tired. The kind of tiredness that comes from resisting something for too long. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. I know. But she stepped aside anyway. The same faint perfume lingered, the same quiet hum of the refrigerator, the same low warmth of a house that always seemed to remember what we'd done inside it. I didn't mean to make things complicated, I said. Her laugh was soft and hollow. Things were complicated before you ever showed up. She walked to the window, arms crossed, her reflection flickering in the glass. I could see the faint shimmer of her eyes when she spoke again. You're young, she said. You'll leave one day. You'll forget all of this. I shook my head. Don't tell me what I'll forget. She turned then, and for the first time, she didn't try to hide it. The want, the fear, the ache. Do you even understand what this costs me? She asked. If someone found out. No one will, I said. I wouldn't let that happen. She took a step forward, then another, until the space between us was a breath. You shouldn't make promises like that, she whispered. Then tell me to leave. Her lips parted, but the words didn't come. Instead, she reached up, fingertips brushing the side of my face, tracing the same line she had that first afternoon when everything changed. Her hand trembled, but she didn't pull away. The rain hit the glass harder, echoing through the quiet room. You have no idea what you're doing, she murmured. Maybe I do. Her breath caught. A small, broken sound. The distance closed to inches. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, unsure. I could feel the warmth of her breath against my skin, the slight tremor in her hand as it slid from my cheek to my neck. Pausing there, as if deciding whether to stay. For a moment, the world held still. The air, the rain, the sound of our breathing, all waiting. Then she whispered, "If this happens, there's no going back." I leaned close, voice barely audible. Maybe there never was. Her eyes flickered, not away, but inward, and I saw it. The surrender, the fear, the want she'd spent weeks trying to bury. Her hand tightened slightly, her lips trembling with everything she couldn't say. And then, a sudden knock at the door. Loud, sharp. We both froze. The sound echoed through the silence like a verdict. Her hand dropped. Her expression shifted, collapsing into something unreadable, half relief, half heartbreak. Neither of us moved. The knock came again, and in the reflection of the window, I saw her close her eyes, just for a second, as if choosing between the world outside and the one we'd almost built here, in secret. When she opened them again, she whispered, "Don't answer." The rain kept falling. The door remained closed, and the space between us, filled with everything almost said, refused to disappear. The knock faded into silence, leaving the rain to fill the space between heartbeats. Neither of us moved at first. It felt like time had split, the version where she opened that door and the one where she didn't. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "It's probably nothing." But we both knew it wasn't nothing. It was the sound of the world waiting for her to remember who she was supposed to be. She walked to the door slowly, stopped halfway, and then turned back. Her eyes met mine, weary, raw, full of something that looked a lot like surrender. "I can't keep doing this," she said quietly. "The hiding, the pretending. I'm not asking you to," I said. She shook her head. "You don't understand. You'll leave this house, this town you'll live, and I'll still be here. The woman who couldn't decide which rule to break first." I took a step toward her, my voice low. "You think that's all this is?" She blinked, startled by the edge in my tone. "I don't care what anyone says," I continued. "I care about you. About this." Her expression softened, just slightly. "You'll regret saying that. Then I'll regret it." The rain outside began to ease, the steady rhythm slowing to a whisper. She hesitated, standing there like someone learning how to breathe again. Then, slowly, she crossed the room. When she reached me, she didn't speak. She just looked, really looked, the way people do when they're memorizing someone. Her hand lifted, uncertain, then rested gently against my cheek. Her thumb traced a slow line along my jaw, trembling a little. "You shouldn't make it this hard to walk away." "Then don't," I whispered. Her eyes searched mine, full of every reason she shouldn't, and every reason she might. And then, instead of kissing me, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to mine. It wasn't a confession. It was a promise she didn't know how to keep. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The warmth of her skin, the quiet sound of her breathing, it was enough. Her fingers slid down, intertwining with mine. The smallest movement, but it felt like the world tilted. "I'll always care for you," she said softly. "But sometimes caring means stopping before it's too late." I wanted to argue, but I didn't. I just nodded, holding her hand a little tighter, knowing this was our ending. Not the one we wanted, but the one that let us both stay whole. As I turned to leave, she called after me. "Hey." I stopped. She smiled, faint, sad, beautiful. "You'll make someone happy one day. Just don't let her be afraid to look at you." I didn't trust myself to answer, so I just smiled back. When the door closed behind me, the rain had stopped completely. The air smelled clean, like something had ended and begun at the same time. And though I didn't look back, I could still feel her presence, quiet, steady, unforgettable. Did you enjoy the story? Which moments stayed with you most? The silence, the rain, the touch that almost happened. What kind of forbidden, tender, or slow burn story should come next?